Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Better Satellite World, the podcast of Space and Satellite Professionals International. I'm Lou Zaccarella. This podcast is brought to you thanks to the generous support of Eutelsat, EchoStar Hughes, and Access Intelligence. Additional support comes from the 3,000 members of Space and Satellite Professionals International and its chapters around the world. Thank you, SSPI. Today, we begin the second season of our series, Risk. This season is sponsored by Kymeta, OneWeb, and Mansat. Please thank them by doing business with them whenever you can. A revolutionary antenna terminal is the key, many believe, to the remaining challenges for global mobile connectivity, effective low-cost communication, and the success of new satellite fleets and the hundreds of businesses, models, and outright industries that they will spawn. Kymeta Corporation is seen as the antenna of choice for the future. With the rollout last week of new versions of its U8 terminals, one for government users, it looks like game really on big time for this Washington State company, a company that smart money like Bill Gates has famously invested in. So what's the risk with being part of Kymeta? Well, Kymeta's Jon Maron is with us today. Jon is the Vice President for Marketing and Communications at Kymeta. Jon has a proven record of building brands, operational excellence, and growing market share across the technology industry. His CV is amazing. And so is Kymeta, many think. So today, we want to ask Jon about the transformational ideas behind the Kymeta antenna product and the brand, and find out a little more about him. Jon, welcome to the Better Satellite World.
Thanks, Lou. That's a pretty hard introduction to follow, but thank you.
Okay. Well, we know you can do it. Well, listen, I want to actually talk about you first. In your bio, you refer to yourself first as a storyteller, mentor, and teacher. Those are three, interesting ways to describe yourself, given your background in brand development and in marketing communications. Why those three choices?
Well, that's a great question. It's very interesting to think about marketing, branding, sales, product management, all those things that go into it. You can have the best product in the world if you're not telling a compelling story about why people need it or what people will do with it, or as I like to call the wow behind the how. It really does get lost. When you're talking to people about products and services, when their eyes start to glaze over, you should basically stop talking.
Yes.
So being a storyteller is really important. And if you think about even marketing and sales together, the only difference between marketing and sales really is that sales is telling a story about a product and marketing is telling a story about something you should believe in.
Yeah, it really is, at the end of the day, a narrative, right? Even though it is a brand, or as you say, a product. And of course, in our industry as communicators, we have to sort of be precise and do it very, very quickly. We call it the elevator pitch.
There you go.
Can you tell me the elevator pitch evolution of Kymeta, and as I said, why investors like Gates put in, I think it was 85 million, and have bet on this success?
Sure.
What is the story?
Yeah, and you kind of combine two questions. So let me start a little bit with the evolution, and then we'll go right into the elevator pitch, so to speak.
That's fine.
So Kymeta has been working to provide a land mobile and maritime satellite connectivity solution built around metamaterials for about 9 years now. Our second generation product, the Kymeta U8, which you mentioned earlier, was released in November of this past year, 2020. It's really the culmination of 7 years of very extensive research and 2 full years of field experience gleaned from our first generation terminal called the Kymeta U7. The Kymeta U8 really is significantly more capable and feature-rich flat panel antenna, or what we call an ESA, electronically steered antenna, with a much higher integration of the terminal to help reduce costs, which I know we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes, and the complexity that standard configurations need in order to support high volume emerging markets. And that's really what we're in right now, not the high volume part, but the emerging markets part. And we like to call this kind of the perfect storm of opportunity. It's driven by significant investments, as you talked about with Bill Gates, and others, and advancements in the commercial space, specifically around launch companies, LEO constellations, launching high throughput GEO and MEO satellite constellations. We really believe that the ground terminal, which is obviously what we do, sits at the center of this LEO MEO ecosystem and is really necessary in order to open mass markets, especially in land and maritime mobility, where you see the need for what we call, like I said, an ESA or a flat panel electronically steered antenna. Because listen, at the end of the day, you can have all the birds in the air you want, but you need a terminal on the ground that performs above expectations under a wide variety of conditions without fail to communicate with the satellites. That's a Kymeta U8.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good way to explain it. We've got a lot of listeners out there who who don't necessarily have the technical background, but are interested in space and satellite and communications. And so for them, when Jon mentions LEO, of course, it's low Earth orbit satellites. That's fine. I just had to learn it myself. But when he mentions high throughput, it's obviously pushing through a lot of stuff, data, video, whatever it is, through the satellites. And those two things he described have been revolutionary. But as he says so well, right, you've got to have the right antenna on the ground to receive this stuff and redistribute it.
Jon, can I just elaborate on that for a second?
Please, yeah, sure.
So we talked about high throughput, and I think what's really interesting for your listeners to know is that between now and 2029, the amount of capacity, as you described it, right, good capacity from space, is supposed to grow by 30 times where it is today. That's an incredible growth rate. In fact, in the next 9 to 10 years, for space and satellite will have more disruption and innovation than the entire previous 30 to 40 years. And most likely that non-geo or supply will outpace the supply that it took the geo operators 50 years to put in space today. Yeah. So having this antenna or terminal that will talk to all of these birds are in the sky becomes really important. But what makes it even more important is because there are so many, we consider ourselves to be satellite agnostic. We don't care whose bird is in the sky. We don't care if it's LEO or GEO. We just want to make sure that the people on the ground have a terminal that will work.
Yep. And nor do you care which markets this goes to, because it's, as I say, it's a flat panel antenna, which again is revolutionary for those of you who really aren't familiar with satellite antennas. But as I say, the emerging markets part of it, I think, is really, really interesting to a lot of people in our industry and outside it, because all of a sudden, the satellite option is going to be made available to entire markets, industries, vertical markets that heretofore had not been able to use it. And as I said in my introduction, you guys are probably going to be able to spawn entire new industries. Now, am I being Pollyannish, or do I have that right? Or is that part of the thinking there?
Well, that would certainly be wonderful. I think in the beginning, we're very focused on some very specific verticals and very specific industries. There's a lot of work that's involved in creating new verticals or spaces, not even just from a hardware perspective, but from an awareness perspective. There are a lot of emerging markets, a lot of customers, a lot of, as you said, listeners out there that aren't necessarily 100% in sync on the new technology, and building that awareness about what the technology is, why you need it, where you can use it, and how easy it is to use becomes a very important part of that solution.
Are you, as a storyteller, are you still explaining the narrative and the Kymeta proposition to people inside our industry? Is that process still going on, or
inside our industry?
Yeah,
maybe not as much, but certainly outside our industry every day.
Yeah. Are there any emerging markets that you guys are targeting that are surprising you with regard to the uptake or the interest?
Surprise. I don't know if we're necessarily
pleasantly surprised. Pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I think we learn new things every day. You know, the old saying, you just don't know what you don't know, right? So as we're putting more product into the marketplace, as we're learning new use cases, as we're discovering various types of conditions that it's being used under, or for. I think we're learning a lot from our customers about what the true need is and how we solve for those problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The virtue of being a great technology that's agnostic. Jon, the title of this series, of course, is Risk. As we get into this year, what have you identified as the single greatest risk factor for the Kymeta product?
Yeah, it goes back to what I was just saying. It's awareness, believe it or not. Like I said, most customers literally don't know what they don't know. They don't know how simple it is to operate and set up. They don't understand the difference between what we call swap, or size, weight, and power. They think of, an antenna, for example, that's on the bottom of Air Force One that, is huge, requires massive amounts of power, and serves only really a specific purpose. And it's what we're developing is so significantly different than anything else in the market. And essentially it goes wherever you go. But however, like any new technology, building awareness and getting the products in front of customers is super critical before launch. When they see it in action, the reaction is usually like, holy cow, I love it. How quickly can I get one or lots of them? Mm-hmm. But tying back to risk, the problem this past year has really been around COVID-19. We announced, as we said, the Kymeta U8 in March at the SAT show and launched it in November, which under the circumstances is pretty remarkable in and of itself. But as you know, getting back to storytelling, usually from an announcement to inception, you're in front of all of your first line potential customers, right, doing demos or having face-to-face meetings. And that really wasn't possible this year. Having said that, the team has done an exceptional job driving demand and spreading the word. In fact, so much so that when we created a beta program for our customers to test the U8 before we launched it, demand far exceeded the number of units we produced for the program. But in terms of getting in front of all of our core customers this past 12 months has been, if not extremely difficult, almost impossible. That's been a huge risk for us.
Yeah, it must be. I mean, of course, we remember that show. They ended it a day early because COVID had right. It had reared its
to put more of a finer point on it. Since we're based in Seattle, Washington, there were a whole bunch of people that said, "Please don't come." So,
right.
So we had all kinds of our own problems around that show. But like I said, given the past 12 months, I think we've made incredible strides in getting the product out and doing a good job letting people know what it is, but obviously we could have done much better.
Well, again, COVID-19 doesn't make life easy. I want to stay on that because we're seeing that COVID-19 has sort of rationalized or made the case for what we've been saying forever, which is, hey, connectivity is important to the modern world. If you're going to have a modern economy, it's probably going to be a broadband economy. And of course, we're seeing that now in cities. We're seeing it in the educational system. Obviously, we see it in the healthcare system. And we're hearing people begin to embrace the fact that what we've been talking about in our industry for a long, long time has come to pass. And it came to pass in a way we didn't necessarily need to see it come to pass. But do you think that the COVID-19 global disaster may boost the importance of a solution like yours?
Absolutely. I think, we really believe that the pandemic has highlighted the need to maintain dependable communications for people, maybe even as a primary vehicle for connectivity. The need for global connectivity really has been accentuated, and the importance for a solution like Kymeta even further demonstrated. There are a lot of, as we've learned, what we call cellular deserts, even here in the US or the continental United States, but even more so in other parts of the world. I mean, in normal times, people just expect connectivity to be everywhere. It's simply expected to work. And in times of crisis, the demand is further demonstrated. I mean, there were all kinds of stories in the beginning about overloaded Wi-Fi networks and down cellular networks. And simply people became more remote than a simple work from home desktop or simply being on the move, right? And that, of course, is Kymeta's specialty, comms on the move. But I think what we've learned through this entire experience is that there are entire regions and companies that have been asked to change how they communicate and how they do business. Not to mention the stress it puts on the emergency response systems that we've seen. You think about some of the news stories that you've seen where ambulances are waiting hours to get into hospitals, and systems are completely overloaded worldwide. So people have had to think the stressors that not only working remotely, but that it puts on the emergency response system and how it puts a strain on the global supply chain of connectivity. So to that end, the demand for our products, services, and connectivity across our platforms, but certainly across just any kind of communication, has increased not only by our own industry, but from every company that's thinking about how we keep our employees and our populations connected.
Yeah, that's a great point. Ubiquitous connectivity is not just a nice idea now. As you say, it really is something that is going to be critical going forward. And remote did take on a new definition over the last year. And again, to your point, I was listening to Andrew Yang, who's actually running for mayor of my city, New York.
I heard that.
And he identified today that 29% of New Yorkers, right? We're a city, are underconnected or not connected properly.
Right.
So there you go, right? Again, making your case. So having said that, with regard to ubiquitous connectivity, what is the single greatest roadblock for it in the comms on the go market? Is it a regulatory issue? Is it the networks themselves? What is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a single greatest roadblock. Again, like any relatively new technology, some are roadblocks and then some are just simply speed bumps. It just depends upon how prepared you are for the road trip, I guess. Fortunately, we have a lot of really smart people at Kymeta that think about that stuff ahead of time. But to your point, there are quite a few things to watch out for. As you said, cellular networks alone won't provide that seamless, or as you said, ubiquitous coverage needed to satisfy always-on communications. As I said earlier, customers just want to be connected wherever they are. And there are a lot of places that they simply aren't. And we've gotten to a point as a globe, or certainly in first world countries, where we just simply expect it to work. We don't want to know the technology behind it. We don't actually care. We just want it to work. And with cellular operators focused on the deployment of 5G, as you've seen, to increase speeds or drive new network and lower latency or whatever, there still remains large gaps that have still little to no cellular connectivity. Heck, as you said, in New York, there's quite a bit. I live out in Washington State, and there are areas in Washington State where first responders literally have no connectivity or can't reach citizens that live in different parts of the state because there's no cellular service out there. Yeah. Heck, we hear stories every day about kids that don't have any way to get connected to their classroom, right? So our new UA terminal supports not only satellite, but cellular hybrid connectivity with seamless switching between the two networks. And although satellite networks are not designed for mobility per se, recent technology advancements continue to help overcome that. I'll give you just a quick example.
Sure.
We have a customer that is part of the US Forest Service out in California. And you would think, oh, California, right? That's one of the most advanced tech states in the country. But there are lots of places where those firefighters or hotshots go where there is no cellular coverage. And in fact, during the recent firestorms, not only was there no cellular coverage, but a lot of their two-way towers got knocked down. So they had no coverage at all. And the great thing about the U8 is it mounts on top of a command vehicle or can be portable if it needs to be, and can go right out to where the fire is. They're not 20 or 50 miles away on a command truck somewhere. Not only keeping everybody on the ground, all the firefighters connected and safe, but giving them firsthand, real-time, arrive-ready information that a cellular phone would never be able to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. And it's not hard to mount, right? In an EMS environment?
No, it's actually, we jokingly say, if you can put a really good stereo and an amp in your car, you can mount one of these on your car with no problem.
Right.
It's literally that simple. It runs off of native DC. It doesn't really draw any more power than a good stereo. And it's designed to mount directly on top of almost all standard roof racks.
Wow. So even an idiot like me could put it up there, because I can't even use a hammer, So this is.
Well, if you can't use a hammer, I don't know if you'll figure this out, but pretty much anybody else.
I'll get some help. I'll call the neighbor, but but the bottom line is it's very simple. Again, you raise another good point that the connectivity that you're describing that Kymeta is bringing to the markets should be like electricity, right? We shouldn't have to think about it. When we don't think about the lights in a room, we go into a conference room, right? You flick on the lights. And what's really important is the business that gets done under those lights at the table, the innovation, the creativity, whatever it happens to be. Same with what, again, Kymeta is going for. Affordability, though, is the issue, right? People say if they get the price figured out, look out. What will Kymeta need to bring to the market an affordable product package in those key vertical markets that you're targeting?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about the cellular satellite hybrid model. It's advanced more in the past 4 or 5 years. You're using lights as your example than electricity did in the first 100 years. So the first thing is for our customers to really understand that Kymeta does offer a full solution from them, from hardware, accessories, all the way through connectivity. I mean, imagine going into your local cell phone store and being told, here's the phone, go figure out where you're going to get connectivity or coverage from, and then how much it'll cost, you're on your own, right? That model would never work. Well, guess what? It hasn't worked well in the satellite connectivity world either. So we created an affordable connectivity and hardware package that's bundled with this hybrid satellite cellular connectivity that's priced a lot more like a mobile phone service on a per gigabyte basis. And we call that service Kymeta Connect. And you get everything you need to the hardware and the service for as little as $9.99 a month. So it's literally as easy, and that's $999, not $9.99.
Right. I was going to say, wow.
Yeah,
we have
it's literally
as
easy as buying a cellular plan, though. So to your point, right now, it's a line item on a budget. It's not an overwhelming OpEx or CapEx expense.
Right.
And understand that satellite and terrestrial services are complementary in our world. Our U8 terminal can support satellite and cellular, and it seamlessly switches between the two. It just picks whichever one is best for you. When you think about it, getting back to some of the acronyms, right, with all the satellite capacity coming online, whether that's LEO, MEO, GEO, or a KU band or a KA band eventually, the gigabyte price of this capacity will become a lot more like cellular, and it'll drive parity between the network or the networks, which will allow seamless switching by consumers. They won't have to think about it. We don't view the technology as competitive to the cellular networks. We think 5G LTE will be complementary. And ultimately, we'll have a network that allows end users to just move wherever they need to go using both networks simultaneously. And obviously, depending upon a number of factors, including coverage, strength, data demands, whatever, that's how we'll price it accordingly.
And again, for those of you listening on the outside, that price, $995, is extremely affordable for this industry. So it is a big advancement. And
yeah, and by the way, I should also say
please,
that you pay the $9.99 a month for a number of years, and then you own the product. So it's not like a lease. You're not giving us the product back when it's done.
Okay, so they keep it. And again, what should intrigue people is, again, this vision of a more connected universe. Well, at least the Earth. I guess when we start talking about the universe in our business, we're really talking about it. But the networks work more efficiently, as you say here. People are more connected. People can live wherever they want and do the things they need to do. And the spawning, of opportunity will emerge from that. Now, again, I tend to go off on that kind of stuff because it's kind of what we do here at SSPI, right? We try to really create the narrative for the future of the industry, tell people why we're a great industry. But Jon, you tell me as we come to a conclusion here, how will you and Kymeta make a better, as we say, a better satellite world? What gets you excited about the more altruistic notions of Kymeta's future?
Yeah, well, what gets me excited really is that we are on the cutting edge or the bleeding edge of this kind of new technology. As I said, the global demand for broadband connectivity continues to grow. It's driven by an insatiable consumption of data everywhere. I mean, from from first responders and military needing it to keep themselves safe and protect us, to the family that wants their kid to be able to watch Nickelodeon in the back of the car. Cellular networks alone won't provide the seamless coverage needed to satisfy an always-on communications or always on the move or comms on the move solution. As I mentioned earlier, we truly believe that we're in the center of this perfect storm of opportunity. As I said earlier, the last 10 years, the development of high-powered satellites literally has changed the way people thought about comms on the move solutions. And, flat panel antennas, or FPAs, are probably one of the most significant breakthroughs in the satellite industry in the past decade. But it's really exciting to see this technology originating, by the way, as far back as the 50s and 60s, finally coming to fruition. And we're in a great position to do that. Like I said earlier, we don't care whose bird's in the sky. And we want to make sure that the ground personnel that are communicating with those are better off than they were when this whole thing started in 1965. So what we're really excited about in building out, and what I'm really excited about, is eventually getting to the place where we reach critical mass and connectivity becomes, as you used the word, ubiquitous. The demand creates a market for new satellite products and services that can only be met through innovation. And what we're doing at Kymeta right now will evolve connectivity to a world that we can't even imagine what global connectivity looks like. These developments are crucial, not only in accomplishing our own company mission, but completing this, what we've called this connectivity fabric, and helping to narrow eventually what we all know as a global digital divide. I mean, these next generation solutions are positioned to bridge that gap. And we're really excited about this perfect storm, and specifically our position at the center of it.
Well, it's well said. I think you got the story right, Jon, as a storyteller here, and I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. And, obviously Kymeta is really a tiger by the tail. So we appreciate it, and good luck going forward this year. Hopefully when we get out of COVID, things will continue to accelerate for you.
Thanks, Lou. Appreciate your time.
My thanks again to Jon for his time today. For more information on Kymeta, go to kymetacorp.com. And that does conclude my conversation with Jon Maron of Kymeta, and starts us on the second season of Risk. Thanks once again to OneWeb, Kymeta, and Mansat for sponsoring this series. The Better Satellite World podcast is also brought to you by SSPI and its corporate partners, EchoStar Hughes, Eutelsat, and Access Intelligence. Learn more about the Better Satellite World series at sspi.org, or contact Tamara Bond-Williams at SSPI to find out how you can be a sponsor. Additional support comes from the 3,000 members of Space and Satellite Professionals International, and we thank you. If you want to become a member, visit sspi.org. If you're a student, your membership is free. To learn how to use this free content for your classroom, social media, or presentation, or if you just want to watch it, visit bettersatelliteworld.com. And follow us on Twitter at SSPI, and check us out on LinkedIn and Facebook. Keep checking with SSPI for information about our March 23rd Hall of Fame induction ceremony. For Space and Satellite Professionals International and our producer, Ana Gomez, I'm Lou Zaccarella. Let's make it a better satellite world. Take care, everybody.